Greetings and thank you for joining this presentation by Jessica Quersola, which provides a chronological overview of the natural disasters in New Orleans preceding and leading up to Hurricane Katrina in 2005. Shannon Doughty, La Ville Sauvage, Nature and Urban Planning in Building the Devil's Empire, French Colonial New Orleans. September 11th, 1722, New Orleans' first recorded hurricane. In 1722, New Orleans became Louisiana's capital. However, in that same year, that area was also struck by a devastating hurricane. Leblanc de la Tour, the royal engineer and Pogger's superior, recounted historic natural disaster event in a letter, stating that around 10 a.m., a violent storm and hurricane struck, lasting until 4 a.m. the next day. It destroyed around two-thirds of the city's buildings, and those left standing were so severely damaged they would need to be taken down. Among the destroyed structures were the church, presbytery, hospital, and a small barracks where laborers had been staying. Remarkably, no lives were lost. Ironically, the engineer viewed the destruction positively, noting that the damaged buildings were old, temporary constructions, not aligned with the planned layout for the new city, and would have needed removal anyway. This unexpected natural disaster, he implied, may have prevented further disputes over the city's redevelopment. Hurricane struck again on August 29, 1732, exposing prehistoric initial levee structural and functional inadequacies. Environmental historian Christopher Morris describes the levee system as a flawed attempt to conquer nature, which paradoxically increased river levels and spurred a cycle of escalating levee construction. Though the first levees were completed in 1732, they failed during a subsequent hurricane, leading to widespread destruction. The aftermath brought years of crop failure and near famine, causing Bienville to question both his environmental control efforts and the colony's agricultural future, and I quote, "This country is subject to such great vicissitudes that one can almost not count on the crops at all. Now there is too much drought, now too much rain." The 1849 flood prompted a significant and sustained environmental discourse concerning land use, water management, and the human impact on natural flood patterns. The 1849 flood ignited an intense debate about the necessity and feasibility of controlling the Mississippi River. While some strongly supported the use of cutoffs, levees, and outlet channels, others were convinced that these interventions would not only fail, but could also lead to disastrous consequences for the lower Mississippi Valley. Despite the urgency of the discussion, little progress or consensus was achieved in the following decade. Another instance of levee collapse. In April 1858, the Mississippi River breached a levee on its west bank just a few miles upstream from New Orleans. By June of that year, the river had compromised the levee system in approximately 36 locations. As a result, large portions of the Mississippi Delta were submerged under 3 feet of water, including the suburbs of New Orleans and the areas across the river extending westward to Bayou La Fourche. Levee funds tied to Union loyalty. In 1865, Mississippi sent a delegation to Washington to seek federal funds for levee repairs and to explore private investment options. However, the committee returned empty-handed. By the summer of 1867, when the matter of levee funding was raised in the House of Representatives, it was decided that Southern states would first need to swear loyalty to the Union and agree to more stringent Reconstruction terms than those proposed by President Johnson. Only after meeting these requirements could they request federal funding, though Congress was still unlikely to approve such requests. An 1879 report claimed the privy system was the most important and most difficult problem connected with the sanitation of New Orleans. The widespread use of privies in 19th century New Orleans had significant environmental impacts. 1. Soil contamination. Human waste deposited directly into the ground led to severe soil pollution, introducing pathogens, organic waste, and nitrates that compromised soil health. 2. Groundwater pollution. With the ground already saturated, waste from defective privies likely leached into the water table, contaminating groundwater sources used for drinking, cooking, and washing. 3. Spread of disease. The unsanitary conditions promoted the spread of waterborne illnesses like cholera, dysentery, and typhoid, linking poor environmental health to public health crises. 4. Air quality degradation. Decomposing waste released foul odors and possibly methane and ammonia, contributing to poor air quality in densely populated areas. 5. Ecosystem disruption. Polluted runoff could reach nearby wetlands and water bodies, disrupting local ecosystems and harming aquatic life through nutrient loading and bacterial contamination. The Great Mississippi Flood of 1927, April 16th. Levee failed at Darena, Missouri. April 19th. New Madrid levee collapsed April 21st. Mounds Landing breach near Greenville, Mississippi. 100+ African Americans died while forced to sandbag under armed National Guard, April 29th. Levee at Caernarvon, deliberately blown to protect New Orleans, devastating local communities downstream. By month's end, 26,000 square miles flooded, over 1 million displaced, considered one of the deadliest and most destructive natural disasters in U.S. history. By the 1930s, under Jim Crow laws, urban development on newly drained swamplands was racially segregated. African American communities were often relegated to lower-lying, flood-prone areas. The environmental impact of segregation in urban development. African American communities were placed in flood-prone, low-lying areas due to Jim Crow policies. Increased vulnerability. Living in poorly protected zones heightened disaster risks. Environmental degradation. Draining wetlands for development disrupted ecosystems and natural flood buffers. Waste and pollution. Poor infrastructure led to the spread of contaminants during floods. Resource depletion. Overdevelopment harmed local agriculture and wildlife, amplifying disaster effects. Flood control, racial politics, and the roots of agricultural expansion and disaster in the Mississippi Valley. Agricultural expansion along the lower Mississippi River relied heavily on flood control, which enabled planters to drain and cultivate the fertile bottomlands. 2 centuries of political decisions regarding race and resources played a crucial role in shaping this agricultural foundation. These policies also influenced settlement patterns in the Mississippi Valley, defined the relationship between valley states and the federal government, and contributed to the conditions that ultimately led to the devastation of Hurricane Katrina. Initial announcement. On August 27, 2005, at 5 p.m., officials issued their initial formal advisory, strongly recommending that residents of Louisiana's Delta region voluntarily evacuate to areas of higher elevation. Post-Katrina transit failures. On August 27th to 28th, New Orleans buses transported evacuees to the Superdome Emergency Center. After the storm, most buses were left in municipal lots. Despite ongoing need for evacuation, the city failed to assign buses or drivers for post-storm evacuations. Storm warning. On August 28, 2005, at 9:30 a.m., New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin issued a mandatory evacuation order in preparation for Hurricane Katrina. This was a response to the growing threat posed by the storm, as authorities aimed to protect residents from its anticipated devastation. A storm classified as Category 5, indicating catastrophic wind speeds and potential damage. On August 29, 2005, as the storm shifted west across Florida, the storm moved into the warm waters of the Gulf, which intensified the storm as a Category 5 storm, with peak wind speed of 175 miles per hour. By 6 a.m., Katrina was broadcast to be a Category 4 storm, with winds of about 140 miles per hour, which pushed on shore near the mouth of the Mississippi River. The tropical cyclone made landfall. Along the coastal region, on August 29, 2005, at around 10 a.m., Hurricane Katrina made landfall near the Louisiana-Mississippi border. This event marked the beginning of one of the most devastating natural disasters in U.S. history, causing widespread damage, particularly in New Orleans, and leading to catastrophic flooding and loss of life. Hurricane Katrina makes landfall. New York Times. Quote, "The wind in New Orleans was blowing the rain sideways, and debris was carried up more than 100 feet, 31 meters, and power was on and off in sections of the city, and emergency vehicles patrolled the main streets, their blue and red lights flashing." Effects of the storm. On August 29, 2005, Hurricane Katrina caused multiple levee and floodwall breaches around New Orleans due to storm surge and wind-driven water. Critical failures occurred along major canals, while many drainage pumps stopped working due to power loss or lack of maintenance. These failures were rooted in flawed pre-storm assumptions and weak infrastructure, including poor design, construction issues, and unstable soil conditions. Aftermath depictions of Hurricane Katrina. Let us take a moment to pause and reflect on the magnitude of the devastation. Life after the storms, the struggles of displaced evacuees. Losing everything and being separated from family and community creates immense trauma for evacuees. Many relocated individuals faced poverty, limited education, and paycheck-to-paycheck struggles before displacement. Despite hopes for better opportunities, many evacuees continue to experience high poverty rates and low earnings in new locations. In some cities like Jackson, Baton Rouge, and Atlanta, poverty and earnings are worse than in their previous homes. Personal responsibility? The racial politics of evacuation warnings ignored pre-Katrina evacuation concerns. As early as 2001, experts stressed the need for a comprehensive evacuation plan. Scientific American article Drowning New Orleans warned that a slow-moving hurricane could flood the city under 20 feet of water. Veteran science journalist Mark Fichetti's warning was echoed in multiple widely read sources. 2004, FEMA simulation, a missed pre-warning, predicted deadly impact of a Category 3 hurricane on New Orleans, estimated 61,290 deaths and 38,257 injuries from catastrophic flooding, accurately reflected Katrina's strength and path. Clear warning of city's vulnerability, largely ignored in disaster planning. In closing, the devastation caused by Hurricane Katrina on August 29, 2005, was the result of a combination of environmental, infrastructural, and governmental components that had developed over decades. Long-term coastal erosion and the loss of protective wetlands significantly weakened natural barriers against storm surges. In addition, the levee system designed to protect New Orleans was inadequately constructed and poorly maintained, failing in multiple locations during the storm. Socioeconomic vulnerabilities, particularly among low-income and minority populations, further exacerbated the disaster's impact. Governmental preparedness and response at the local, state, and federal levels were widely criticized for being slow, uncoordinated, and insufficient, compounding the humanitarian crisis. Together, these systemic issues set the stage for the widespread destruction and loss of life that followed Hurricane Katrina's landfall. Thank you for listening.